So in this presentation, we're going to go into learning the basic movements of Kuo Lien Ying's rapping on his Dan Dao. Couple of things, if you're just coming into trying to learn the Dan Dao and you've never picked one up before, I suggest you go to my video, Basics of Dan Dao Sword Handling, in my Saber playlist. You can learn some of the basics there and just general handling of the Dan Dao, the Saber. Again, in the offhand, you're using your finger to and thumb on the guard to control the position of the blade. But I'm assuming that you've gone through that video, you've kind of learned the basic movements and slice, and so we can take it from there. I'm going to show you a couple of exercises to practice this special wrapping technique of Sifu goals. Again, in the video Essentials of Kuo Lien Ying's Dan Dao Saber, I talked about how unique this was in that it's a continuous wrapping motion, and rather than just a single wrap that goes into the end like that in some styles, this is a continuous motion for the wrap. And so because of that, instead of coming over the shoulder for an end like this, you want to come over the shoulder on this side, so you come down, so you end up with a horizontal wrap. If you were doing the traditional wrap like this, then you would have to kind of drop down in order to continue that horizontal slicing. So the wrapping action could just be continuous on this wrap that we're going to learn. But before you do the wrap, there's a couple of exercises you can do to work on the slicing. And again, one of the main considerations of the Dan Dao is that you're using a very relaxed arm motion, and you're letting the weight of the Dan Dao dictate the speed and force of the swing. So it should be very relaxed. It's not trying to control it like that, but it's just try to relax and let the weight of the Dan Dao create the movement. When you do it fast, you can hear the difference of that slice. If your blade is off, it's going to create kind of more of a slush sound, if you want kind of a slicing sound that's very more high pitch. Also, the offhand, as in my other lessons, creates balance. And in this wrapping action, this left hand is going to do a certain amount of movements along with the right. So you have to kind of work on getting both of them coordinated. So in working with the just the slicing motion, you just kind of do the general slicing like I showed in other basic videos, cutting out and then coming in, cutting out and coming in. So again, I want you to progress at your own speed, but basically practice these basic exercises so you get very comfortable. You notice how my left hand is coming in and out. Sometimes the left hand is mirroring the action of the sword hand, and sometimes the left hand will be doing opposite counterbalancing. So in this exercise, it's kind of going back and forth. Many times the offhand is used for following the sword, as well as counterbalancing and balancing. And again, in function, this hand might be like, as you're doing the wrap, the hand could be grabbing a weapon that the sword is just blocked, and taking the weapon so you can come around for the cut. So the offhand has a lot of use and function. So the basic exercise is practice doing like this. And also, in order to practice specifically Siku's stepping and wrap, I advise you to also do this exercise, stepping back, because the cut happens on this step back, and the stepping back creates a little extra force against the slice. It's like a pendulum too. By stepping back, creating that force that goes out. That's part of the rhythm of the movement. You can do it statically as well. And kind of with the stepping back and forth. The next step after that would be practicing this cutting, the slicing into the block. So, and after you go out as far as you can comfortably with the shoulder rotation, and from here you're going to lift the arm and drop the sword, like here. There's kind of a little, I wouldn't call it trick, but kind of a specific technique that when you're holding the dandao, the main control is on the front two fingers, so you're not grasping like really tight, because if you grasp too tight, your wrist is stiff, and it's much harder to manipulate the flexibility that you need for controlling the blade. So, so the key is to hold the saber with the two fingers and use this other two fingers for controlling the direction of the blade. You see how this finger is up here is controlling the vertical essence of the sword, and this determines good form by having that blade come straight down your back. So the slice should be about waist level, and then when you get to the end, you're going to come up with the sword, up with the arm, and drop the sword down. You want your arm fairly straight. You can bend the elbow a little bit, but you're using your wrist to control the vertical of the sword. So for this exercise, you're just going to slice to that position, come back, slice to that position. You have to get a feeling for how far to go out to here in order to get that vertical arm and vertical sword coming down your back. Again, the key is not so much in the arm, but it's really in the hand position here, controlling the angle of the blade. Another key is to using the weight of the sword for the slice and the weight of the sword for the drop. Okay. And again, by lifting your arm high up, it's easier to get that sword straight down rather than if you kind of try to manipulate it with your arm, because most of the time, if you try to use your bent arm, it's going to end up looking like this without you realizing it. So the straight arm, the relaxed wrist, and the momentum are the keys to doing this. The same time that you're going in the original slicing motion, you're going out like this with the left hand. As soon as you start doing the vertical wrap here, this hand comes into this position here. Okay, so it looks like this. If you break up practicing this as the way that I'm showing you into these steps, it's going to be a lot easier than trying to do the full motion at one time. So again, step one, practice just the slice. You can practice the slice also without coming back to the other cut, but practicing this is good for training later on. Practicing with a step. Yeah. And then practice just the lift into the wrap. And then using the left hand, the off hand, up to this position. From here, you drop down. So you want this sword to go the horizontal slice into the vertical, and you're going to want to come over that shoulder. So you want the sword at this point come around from the vertical over the shoulder. Again, on some of the other traditional sword wraps, you come to here, and then you're going to come over the shoulder for the final presentation of that. On the Sifu style, comes all the way here, so that the point comes from the back around the shoulder. You want to end up with the tip of the blade just about elbow level, I think, like that. Because from here, you're going to drop the blade, the hand, the grip down. The point stays here. So now you're going to continue the slice out. So in the full wrapping motion, it's slice, wrap to the back, point down, come down, kind of like, again, like a triangle with your arm and the sword to here. And this hand is coming up, and as you're doing the slice, goes out, then the wrap, this left hand comes up, and as this sword comes down, as the handle grip comes down, point pretty much stays in the right same place. This hand is coming out and then turning, so you do it all again. So without any kind of stepping motion, the wrap looks like this. Slice, wrap, come down, slice, wrap, left hand comes up, slice, wrap, comes up, slice, wrap, drop down. So once you get this full motion, you can practice this over in a static standing position. Try to get it into one full wrap motion. This is after you've done the other steps breaking it down. So if you try to do it too fast into the full motion, it's going to be, you're going to miss some of those steps. So again, break it down so we're just going to do static stance. The slice, the wrap, and the sword drop, tip drop, and coming over the shoulder. Tip stays pretty much static. Drop your arm down as the hand comes down, and then the hand goes back out. Like pushing with the other hand, left hand. So again, the cut is waist level, and then coming back down. So before we get into learning the form, I really advise to learn this sword wrapping technique over and over and over because it's going to be the essence of the whole form. It's performed quite a few times in the form, and it's really one of the keys distinctions of the form. So the more that you practice the sword wrap in preparation for the lessons that I will present in learning the entire Kuo Lien Ying Dan Dao form, the better off you'll be. And just for basically learning, getting familiar with learning the Dan Dao, this is an excellent exercise. After you, I think it'll take a couple more steps. So after you learn the basic wrap, again, I advise you to take this at your own speed and just kind of know yourself and just proceed only as fast as you need to in order to keep good form. Good form is the total essential of learning is because it's your foundation. If you proceed too fast without establishing that good rote form, then you're going to like fall apart as we get more complicated. And again, in some other videos, I talked about the difference between rote training and conceptual training. This what we're learning is basically rote because you're trying to build a track. The track is the movement that you want to be able to repeat over and over so it becomes nice and fluid and part of your subconscious. And by doing it over and over, like rote training, you're building those tracks in. Okay, so once you get the static one down here, again, as I pointed out in the beginning, the stepping action, because again, in wrapping motion, it's a repeated, in the form, you repeat that step 3 times and a jump, sometimes 2 times in the jump. Like in Tai Chi, there's not a set amount of times that you're required to do it. You can do it anywhere from 1 time to 3 times. So it's more fluid. So because you're in that stepping back, you're stepping back with the right leg. That's why in practicing the rhythm, I had you in the very beginning practice this motion here so that you can go into that correct wrap. So to practice that wrapping motion with a little bit of movement, you can do like this: step back, and then you do the wrap, step forward again. So you get the kind of the same rhythm. So just in this exercise for today, we're not going to do the final finish of it. There's a couple of different ways you can do this finish. You can do jump. You can do over the shoulder, like the traditional. You can do all the way down to the side, do it like that. There's a few different ways you can end that series, but for today's lesson, what we're doing is trying to learn that basic wrapping motion. Okay. Okay, again, if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. I really love the Dao and I think that you'll enjoy practicing with it. So this will be the first basic lesson. Thank you.